How will the world end? Will it be because of a fiery asteroid that will end us like it did the dinosaurs? Or will tsunamis, earthquakes, hurricanes, and tornadoes reassert the natural order? Or will it be because of us? Because of our lust for power, influence, and safety? Well, in 1962, we were moments away from finding out. Hi, my name is Gabe Bauer, and this is Top Shelf History, where we combine great stories with great drinks. This is the Cuban Cold Call. It is a drink I have made for you today based on those harrowing events of October 1962 when the world almost saw itself come to war. It's a drink made with only a few ingredients: vodka, rum, lime juice, and absinthe, and of course, Coca-Cola. It's similar to a Cuba Libre with some very stark twists. The 1960s were a tumultuous time. Both the United States and the USSR were around their peak in power, and the Cold War was in full swing. The two had almost gone to war in 1961 over the building of the Berlin Wall, and East and West Berlin were completely separated. Tanks were fully locked and loaded. After the confrontation at Checkpoint Charlie, the world seemed to collectively hold their breath over and over again. And we'd have to do so once more in 1962 when Major Richard Heiser was flying his reconnaissance plane over Cuba and spotted something on the ground. It was an SS-4 medium-range ballistic missile being assembled in Cuba. Now, Cuba was under the leadership of dictator Fidel Castro, who was incredibly supportive of the USSR and dependent on the USSR for money and supplies and so many other things. Now, America and the USSR were more than happy to flex their muscles while being on opposite sides of the planet, but with Cuba being so close, this caused a flurry of panic in the White House. While John F. Kennedy and his advisors were panicking, trying to figure out what solutions they could do, they threw around some suggestions, and many of them were terrible. The first one was that we could invade Cuba again. We had already tried this before in April of 1961 when America tried to depose Fidel Castro from power and therefore free or liberate Cuba from its communist dictatorship. This was known as the Bay of Pigs, and it was an invasion that was a complete and total failure. So Kennedy wasn't too keen on trying that again. The next thing that they could try is subterfuge, in which they took anti-Castro Cubans and sent them back into the island nation in order to depose the government through a new coup. But that also carried with it some risks, and if it was tracked back to America, could once again start a war. So, with all of these suggestions being bombarded, Kennedy just sat there and thought, I think the best option we have here is to do a blockade. If Russia agrees to dismantle their missile silos in Cuba, America would have to take away their blockade. And Russia would also agree never to build missile silos or store missiles in Cuba again. And there was another component to this deal that many people may not realize, because America publicly said no, but privately they said yes. America agreed to take their missiles out of Turkey. A short, small deal with a massive impact. Thank God they made it. And once again, history shows that the world is always teetering on the brink of insanity. And with that, let's get into our drink. Now, as I said at the beginning of this episode, we want to rethink the Cuba Libre. It is one of the biggest, most iconic things about Cuba and American relations, after all. So, in understanding now the Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962, I think it's appropriate to do something that's inspired by that original drink. So, we will start off our drink here with 1/2 ounce of Bacardi Rum. Why Bacardi Rum? Because this company was started in Cuba, and although a lot of the rum that is consumed now in America is made in America or Puerto Rico, we should definitely go with the original company that made the Cuba Libre so famous. So we'll put in our ½ ounce here. And this, of course, is a great representation of Cuba's role in this entire event. Cuba obviously wanted to continue to build their strength as they were, you know, a communist country up against the big capitalist America, and they wanted to make sure that they weren't going to get invaded again, like they did with the Bay of Pigs invasion, but they fought that one off. Our next ingredient here is Russian standard vodka. Obviously, this is the Russian standard, and considering the emphasis on the USSR here in our story, I think having vodka is a pretty good add. So we'll put in a ½ ounce of that here as well. Now we've got our Russia, our Cuba. Next thing I want to add here is perhaps the most explosive ingredient in our drink, and that is going to be our absinthe. So let's put in our absinthe here. Now, why am I using absinthe? Because one of the central parts of this entire story is the threat of global thermonuclear war. And what could be better represented of a, you know, uranium, radioactive, explosive liquor than absinthe? I mean, after all, if you believe the stories, this stuff has its own dangers to it. Plus, it's green and powerful in flavor. It's exactly what I think we need. So we're only going to put in a splash of absinthe here because we don't want to overpower our other flavors. But just imagine this like being one of those little uranium atoms that go into those massive nukes, right? So much damage in such a little thing, so much flavor in such a little amount. And lastly, before we finish up our cocktail here, we are going to put in a ½ ounce of lime juice. Just struggle with getting off the cap for a moment, but we got it here. So actually, if you want it to be less sweet here, then a ¼ ounce will just do fine. After all, we don't want to overpower with too much lime flavor as well. Next, we're going to throw in some ice. Just get some here. There we go. And give it a quick stir. There we go, that's all nice and mixed. And then finally, we want to place this into our highballer glass. So I'll throw in our ice in there, and then we will strain. Have a couple of ice cubes fall out because you didn't strain great, but that's okay. We could always use a little bit more ice. And then lastly, to top this off, to really remind us of that Cuba Libre inspiration, we have to have our American element. So with that, we'll throw in some Coca-Cola. Just fill it all the way up to the top. Oh yeah, I'm sure that's an explosive combination with all those flavors in there. But unlike what happened in real life, this one will be pretty nuclear in reaction. Finally, let's top it off with our garnish, lime. And there you have it, the Cuban cold call. Now, that's pretty intimidating. Almost like a missile in and of itself, filled with powerful flavors that we can't even comprehend. Let's try. Yep. That is an explosion of flavor, but a delicious one and a welcome one. You've got the really good sweetness of that rum, right? That's coming from the Bacardi. Then you've got a little bit extra booziness coming from the vodka, and the lime balances both of those out, and they work so well with that Coca-Cola. But then, right there, the most overpowering and perhaps longest lasting flavor in this drink is definitely that absinthe. It is explosive, as I described before. It's a delicious drink, certainly one that I think really changes the idea on a Cuba Libre, because this is the Cuban cold call, but really something that I think you should give a try yourself. And that sounds like last call. So following the Cuban Missile Crisis and the world holding its collective breath yet again because of the tension growing between the US and the USSR, the two sides realized that we have to do something. We can't constantly be at the moment where we're going to kill each other and everyone else on Earth. And so Khrushchev and Kennedy came up with an idea to create a line, a single connected phone line, which would connect the Oval Office to the Kremlin, the Soviet premier to the US president, so that at any time where we felt that we were on the brink of war because of whomever's decision, the two most powerful men in the world at the time could get on the phone and say, hey, are we really going to do this right now? And then they could talk it out and realize that it was a really bad decision, and then come together and hang up the phone. Now, this phone actually lasted all the way through the Cold War, and it wasn't really until the fall of the USSR as Gorbachev and his government went down. But it's pretty incredible to think about the importance in world relations that that singular phone had. After all, this is the Cuban cold call, and what would be a cold call without the phone? And I'm sure both world leaders received several phone calls, and I think every single time that they picked up the phone, they were hoping it would end warmly instead of cold. Thank you all so much for watching. If you'd like to check out any of our other historically inspired cocktails, you can find them here, or you can also find them at our website at topshelfhistory.com. There we also have all of our blogs, recipes, videos, and more from all of us here at Top Shelf History. Remember, history is better with a drink. Cheers.